Hello there friends, it's Ashley here from the Loopy Lamb and theloopylamb.com, and thanks so much for stopping by the channel today. Today I'm going to be showing you how to do a beautiful, beautiful Tunisian stitch, and this is called the Tunisian Purl Stitch. Now this does replicate the look of knitting, and it's one of my favorite Tunisian stitches to do because look at this. No purling. So this is a really great stitch to know if you're interested in doing Tunisian crochet projects. So we're going to walk through how to do the Tunisian crochet stitch, as well as 2 different ways to bind off your project. To follow along with today's tutorial, you're going to need a yarn of your preference. I'm using Bravo worsted weight yarn in the color Dove Heather. You're going to need a Tunisian crochet hook. I'm using a 6mm Tunisian crochet hook for my worsted weight yarn. This is the new Bequest Lantern Moon Tunisian hooks. And you're going to need a pair of scissors for when you're ready to fasten off. So let me clear my workspace and we'll get ready to dive in learning how to crochet the Tunisian Purl Stitch. To start our Tunisian Purl Stitch swatch, we need to create a slip knot. So we're going to grab the tail end of our yarn and wrap it around our fingers around the back, bringing it around the front, crossing it over, and then flipping our hand over and bringing the yarn with us. Then I'm just going to pin it down between my ring finger and middle finger. Then bringing in my crochet hook, I'm going to go under the first strand, over the second, and then pull that second strand out and under the first strand, and then I'm just going to let all of the yarn come off of my fingers and transfer it onto the hook. Then I'm going to pull my 2 strands of yarn, and then once the knot is tight, I'm going to pull on the working end of the yarn, which is the end that's attached to the ball still, and I'm just going to give that a tug until that knot comes up and is right next to the hook, but you can still have some fluidity of movement there. Now when you're doing the Tunisian Purl Stitch, you can do this in any stitch multiple that you'd like. So it doesn't matter as long as you chain the number of stitches that you would like to have. So for today's tutorial, I'm going to do a chain of 10. So to do that, we're going to yarn over and pull the yarn through the loop. That's 1 chain, yarn over and pull through the loop, and there's 2. We're going to continue this until we have 10, or until you have the desired number of chains or stitches that you would like to have. Now, once I'm done my chain, I want to take a look at my chain. And if you're familiar with crochet, usually you would want to work through the front of the chain and through the center of these V's. With Tunisian crochet, we don't want to do that. We want to actually turn our chain so you can see the back bumps that are on the back of the chain there. We're going to be working through those back bumps. And so with our chain facing downwards, we're going to insert our hook in through the back bump of that second chain, like so. Then we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. Now, when we're doing Tunisian, there's a forward pass and a return pass. What we're doing now is called the forward pass. And when we're doing our forward pass, it means we're picking up loops as we're working across our piece. And we're going to leave those loops on our hook. So inserting into the next chain through the back bump, we're going to insert our hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. And again, that loop stays on our hook. And we're just going to do this in every chain across, working in through the back bump, yarning over and pulling up a loop. If you're following along and you're doing the same number of chains as I am, you should have 10 chains, or 10 loops I should say, on your hook when you're done picking up all of your loops. Now, when I say you want to chain the number of stitches you would like, it's because that first loop on your hook counts as a stitch. So if you, unlike when you're chaining for regular crochet, like single crochet, you would chain 1 more than you would actually want for stitches. In Tunisian, for this stitch particularly, you're going to chain the number of stitches that you'd like to have. So now that we're at the end here, I'm picking up my last loop. You can see that we've got all 10 loops on our hook, and we're ready to do the return pass for our foundation row. To do that, we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. So chain 1. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. Okay, then we're going to yarn over again and pull through the next 2 loops. And we're going to continue this action of yarning over and pulling through 2 loops at a time until we get to the end. So again, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, all the way to the end of your row. So when you finish, you should have 1 loop remaining on your hook, and this is what your piece should look like so far. And now that we've done our foundation row, we're ready to start our first row of actual Tunisian purl stitching. Okay, so to do that, just as a reminder, if you're not familiar with Tunisian, we always skip the first bar here. That counts as our edge stitch. We never work into that for Tunisian purl stitch. To do the purl stitch, you're going to have to bring your yarn in front of your hook, and I like to do that by bringing my hook and swinging it around here so it is behind the yarn. Then we're going to insert our hook through the vertical bar in the front. So kind of like a Tunisian simple stitch, you're going to be picking up the loop from right to left if you're right-handed, and you're going to go like this and pick up the front loop. Okay, but we want that yarn to be in front. So we're going to push the yarn in front of our hook, bring our hook down and insert our hook to pick up that front loop. Then we're going to bring the yarn across that loop so it's behind our hook again. Then we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. And that's your first Tunisian purl stitch completed. So let's do that again. We're going to bring the yarn in front of the hook and then insert our hook through the front bar. Then we're going to bring our yarn around behind the hook again. Then we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. And remember, as we're working, we want to keep those loops on our hook because when you're doing the forward pass, you're picking up all those loops that you'll work off in your return pass. So again, bring that yarn in front of the hook and insert your hook through the front bar like so. Bring the yarn behind the hook, then yarn over and pull up a loop. And we're going to continue to do this for every vertical bar that we have across our piece until we get to the end. So we're just going to continue to do this Tunisian purl stitch, and I'll show you what we do when we get to the last stitch. All right, so we're at the end and we have that edge stitch that we need to work, and I've seen it called the Tunisian last stitch. And so what we're going to do is, it's easier if you kind of turn your work to the side, and you can see that there are 2 strands here. There's one in the back and one in the front. Those are still your vertical bars, but they're on the edge of the piece. And when we're doing the Tunisian last stitch, what you want to do is you want to insert your hook and pick up both of those loops so you get a nice clean border on the edge of your work. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our hook and insert under both vertical loops here. That can be a little tricky if you did your chain 1 tightly. So you should see that you have 2 bars when you insert your hook into that edge stitch. Then you're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. And that's your edge stitch completed. Now, if you want to make sure that you're not picking up or losing any stitches, you can just count these loops on your hook and make sure that you have 10. Okay, so we're going to do our return pass now for the Tunisian purl stitch. And we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. Right? Again, that's creating that edge, that nice edge border that we have there when we do our chain 1. Then we're going to yarn over hook and pull through the first 2 loops. Okay, then we're going to yarn over and pull through the next 2 loops. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through the next 2. We're going to continue this across our piece, and now this is called the standard return pass. where you're just yarning over and pulling through 2 loops. And that's how your first row of Tunisian Purl Stitch should look. And you can see that we've got these gaps up at the top, and that's totally normal. You're going to have those filling in as you continue to do your purl stitch throughout your swatch. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you how to do the next row of Tunisian Purl Stitch, and then I'll continue to crochet my swatch here for a bit, and then I'll show you how to bind off the Tunisian Purl Stitch. Okay, so when you're doing your next row of Tunisian, again, we're not working into that first vertical bar. We're going to start here in the second. So pushing the yarn forward, inserting our hook through that front vertical bar, and then bringing the yarn behind your hook, yarn over, and pull up a loop. Now, if you're having a hard time doing that that last pull through there with your yarn over, I'm going to show you what I do, and sometimes I do it without even thinking and forget to explain it. So I'll show you that now. So I'm going to do my purl stitch and pushing my yarn to the front, and I'm inserting into the vertical bar, and the yarn is in the back. So once you get to this step, if you're finding you're struggling with doing the yarn over and pull through in this last step, what I like to do is place my fingernail or my finger here on the yarn that's laid across the vertical bar, and I like to just kind of hold it in place, so that way my yarn doesn't really have much movement that it can do, and there's more control into the stitch. So I yarn over at this point and then pull up a loop. Right, and that's just a little trick that I've learned to help make that last yarn over and pull through a little easier. So again, we're just doing that Tunisian Purl Stitch all the way to the end. So here we are at the end again, and we've got to pick up our next set of loops on the edge. This is the Tunisian last stitch, and this, you can see we've got our back bar and our front bar. We're again picking up both of those loops when we insert our hook. You can see both loops there. Then yarn over and pull up a loop. Then we're ready to do our return pass. So we're going to yarn over and chain up 1. Then we do yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, all the way to the end. All right. So when we are ready to bind off, and I'll come back to you in just a moment, I'll show you how we're going to bind off. I'm going to add a few more rows here, and so that way you can see the bind off a little easier. So I'll be right back and showing you how to do the bind off for the Tunisian Purl Stitch. So I'm back, and I've got a few more rows of the Tunisian Purl Stitch here, and I'm going to show you how to bind off. So there's 2 different ways that you can bind off, and I'm going to show you how to bind off your Tunisian Purl Stitch purlwise. So what we would, and this is my favorite way to do it, there's a simpler way to do it, but it's this actually gives me, in my opinion, a little bit of a nicer looking edge and is in line with the stitches that we've just created. So to bind off purlwise, what you're going to do is you're going to bring your yarn in front and insert your hook through the vertical bar, as we've done with the purl stitch all this time. Then we're going to bring the yarn around the back, and then we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. Okay, but we want to bind off. We don't want to pick up any loops because we're done with our swatch. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull that loop through the loop on our hook. Okay, then we're going to do that again. We're going to bring the yarn in front, insert our hook like we're doing the purl, bring the yarn in back, yarn over and pull up a loop. And then you're going to pull that loop through the loop on your hook. And we're just going to continue to do this across. We work as if we're doing the Tunisian Purl Stitch, and then when we pull up our loop, we're pulling that loop through the loop on our hook. And we're just going to continue to do this all the way across. We have to do something slightly different when we get to our edge stitch, and I'll show you how to do that as well. So bear with me one moment while we work to the end, doing our purlwise bind off. So we're at the last stitch here. It's our edge stitch, so it's our Tunisian last stitch. And when we're doing that, we're just going to do the last stitch like we have in all the previous rows with a slight exception. So we're inserting our hook and picking up both those vertical bars, yarn over and pull up a loop. And then we pull that loop through the loop on our hook. And then you could yarn over and then pull your yarn all the way through, cutting your yarn, and you have successfully done your bind off in the Tunisian purl stitch. Now, if you don't want to go through the extra step of doing binding off Purlwise, I will show you how to do the standard bind off. All right, so we're back with our swatch. We've got our last row complete and we're ready to bind off. So what you can do is you can just insert your hook from right to left here under the vertical bar, yarn over and pull up a loop, then pull that loop through the loop on your hook. And this is called the slip stitch bind off. And again, you're just going to do a slip stitch. You're going through the vertical bar, yarning over and pulling up a loop, and then pulling that loop through the loop on your hook. And you're just going to do that all the way across your piece. Now, when we get to the Tunisian last stitch, for your edge stitch there, it is the same as in previous rows, and I'll show you that again now that we're here. We're going to insert our hook through both those vertical bars, yarn over and pull up a loop, then pull that loop through the loop on your hook. And then you can just yarn over and pull your yarn all the way through, and that is your standard bind off. So I hope that you found this helpful. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. And if you'd like to have a photo tutorial that you can check out of this video tutorial, you can find that over on my blog with written instructions for this stitch, the Tunisian Purl Stitch, over on my blog, theloopylamb.com. Thanks so much for watching, friends. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and please consider subscribing. And if you enjoy free crochet patterns, please check out my blog, theloopylamb.com. Thanks so much for watching, friends. Happy hooking, and I'll see you next time.